Welcome to The Beat. I'm Jason Johnson in for Ari Melber, and there is a ton of news happening right now. President Biden announces a bipartisan infrastructure deal, but there's a twist. And this story getting a lot of attention. Rudy Giuliani has his New York law license suspended for election lies. But we start tonight with the MAGA insurrection and a major announcement from Speaker Pelosi. They will tap a select committee to investigate the January 6th riot at the Capitol. This is after Republicans blocked an independent committee designed to basically find out what was going on. And Republicans stopped it, even though their own lives were at risk.
This morning, with great solemnity and sadness, I'm announcing that the House will be establishing a select committee on the January 6th insurrection. The timeline will be as long as it takes for them, the time they need to do the investigation of the causes of this.
Speaker Pelosi basically flexing on Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans for blocking an independent commission into people that wanted to kill them all.
It is imperative that we establish the truth of that day and ensure that an attack of that kind cannot happen and that we root out the causes of it all. It is clear that the Republicans are afraid of the truth.
This committee will have subpoena power so they can haul in any witnesses under penalty of law with questions about who knew what and when, including lawmakers, and focus on Trump's role. This news coming as the Department of Justice released new body camera video. I want to warn you, this video is disturbing. 500 people have been charged in federal court in connection with the terrorist attack, and another far-right group member just agreed to cooperate after a guilty plea for conspiracy and obstruction. Joining me now is New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg, Democratic strategist Juanita Tolliver, and Elie Mystal, justice correspondent for The Nation. Elie Mystal, the Lewis Black of politics, one of my favorite people. I'm going to start with you. So we've got 500 people who have been under investigation. They've already been arrested. How far do you think this is going to go? Look, I'm as comforted as the next person that people who tried to overthrow this country are being brought in. But after news yesterday that you still have some people walking out with just probation, how many of these 500 people would you speculate right now might actually see real jail time for attempting to overthrow America?
Well, you're starting with 500, and I say the total data set here is still 800. 800
right.
People breached the Capitol that day. Only 500 have been arrested. So I guess 35% of y'all got off scot-free, right? So like that, those people are just right now out of the mix entirely. We're only dealing with the 500 they've been charged. And as you said, Judge Royce Lamberth yesterday had some very strong words for what he's gonna do. But what he did do was allow the first insurrectionist off with probation on the theory that she was super sorry about what she did. And now she's read some stuff about Black Lives Matter and she realizes that she might have been wrong. So like that apparently let her get off with probation. Look, I don't, if I may play the Jason Johnson of this show today, my concern is that we are not doing enough to stop these people. Select committees are great, but and you said it, they have subpoena power. You know who also had subpoena power? The impeachment committees, and Don McGahn only showed up yesterday after dodging them for 2 years, right? So I'm not psyched about the select committee really having enough teeth to investigate this. And I'm still unconvinced that Merrick Garland's Justice Department are going to bring the RICO conspiracy charges necessary to actually punish these people to the fullest extent of the law.
With that in mind, so Juanita, look, we had the judge yesterday. When the judge handed out his ruling, we'll bring it up on screen. He said, look, it's utterly ridiculous that you had members of Congress who still said that this was, a tourist trip and people were just hanging out. So apparently we have some judges who realize how ridiculous this is. But Juanita, my question for you is, look, this happens to be a judge who cares about America and has common sense. What do you think is going to be the result once some of these people end up in front of judges that maybe, I don't know, Donald Trump selected or Republicans put in office, who not only might let these people off scot-free, but might give statements encouraging future behavior? Is that something we should be concerned about?
I think absolutely be concerned about it. And Jason, I also want to remind you that this is also the judge that told the defendant in this sentencing that he's cutting her a break. Right. I'm also concerned about other judges cutting these defendants a break. And as Ellie said, this is not accountability. What? Community service, probation, a nominal fine? Like, that's it? Like, we know Black people have faced worse penalty for sitting outside the corner store, right? Like, these are people who walked into the Capitol building, and while she's saying she's sorry, she watched Schindler's List, like, you know, like, that's not enough. It's the epitome of white privilege to go and say, I'm embarrassed, I did the wrong thing, even though I posted that I had a great effing time on the day, but now I'm contrite. And that's why I shouldn't get at least 6 months of jail time. Look, these judges need to get it together and hold these people accountable. And I'm also looking to Pelosi Select Committee to hold elected members accountable for their efforts in riling up this crowd. Remember, there are GOP members who tweeted, today is like 1776. Be prepared to defend the White House. Let's do this for Trump. So there's a lot of that needs to come out of the Select Committee. And even though their subpoena power might not be far-reaching, as Ellie mentioned, I think we can uncover a degree of truth that is absolutely going to have an impact on the American public as we head into the midterms. And Pelosi said this is going to go for as long as it takes. And I'm sure Republicans are just cringing at the idea that this is going to be a drumbeat of communication going into 2022.
You know, Juanita, it is interesting to me that you can hear these people who get busted and they say, oh, I read a book and now I know slightly better. I would love to hear somebody up on drug charges say, you know what, I watched season 4 of The Wire and now I realize I'm wrong. I don't think that would work. I don't think that's going to get anybody jail time. But, Michelle, I want to ask you this. We're going to focus sort of on Pelosi's putting together this committee. The value of these committees is twofold in my mind. One, obviously, we can find out more information about the people who tried to overthrow the country. But two, as we've seen Republicans use them in the previous administration for Benghazi and things like that, they are also communication. They're performance art. What kinds of people do the Democrats need to put on this committee to make sure that we're getting those kind of loud, viral Jim Jordan moments so that the public doesn't forget about the fact that the Republican Party is complicit in the attack that happened?
Well, I think it's not just about performance. I mean, if you look back to the Benghazi committee, arguably without it, we would have had a Hillary Clinton presidency because it was the Benghazi committee that unearthed the fact that she had these emails on this server that we then heard about through all of 2015 and 2016. Look, I think that we had 2 impeachments, both of which had a number of superb prosecutors from the House. Anybody from either of those impeachments could do a phenomenal job on this committee. But the job of this committee, I think, is not just to have these moments, as important as that is. These 500 cases are going to give us a sort of fractured version of what happened that day. But in order to give us a holistic version, and a version that doesn't just look at the people who actually stormed the Capitol, but the people who encouraged them, the people who maybe funded them, the people who knew that this was coming, you know, Donald Trump, the people who set up that rally, the people who, you know, the members of Congress that encouraged him, and also looked at what was going on at the White House as it became clear that there had been this breach and that we were on the verge of, you know, sort of decapitation of a branch of government. In order to get that holistic picture, you need basically people who are skilled investigators and skilled legal fighters, because you're right that Don McGahn was able to resist for 2 years, but eventually he wasn't. And this is going to go on for a long time.
So, Juanita, when we have this committee together, and just thinking about it from a communication strategy standpoint, where do you want to start? Does Pelosi want to start with just some good storytellers? Does she want to start with dragging in men and women who might be under investigation already? Where do you think a good starting place for this Select Committee would be for the Democrats, knowing that, again, they want this to not only enlighten the public as to what happened, but lay the groundwork for what they need in 2022? Where should they start?
I think, Jason, it's about perspective setting of the individuals who are in the building that day, showing the active threat that they faced. I'm talking about custodial workers, which no one has talked about largely, who were also had their lives threatened on this day. Set the tone by talking about the threat so that when you do start to paint the fuller picture about what was happening behind the scenes, whether GOP members were giving tours to insurrectionists before the attack on January 6th, what Trump was tweeting before and after when they decided to move the rally date to January 6th. Like, when you start to fill that in, it all comes back to, and this was the active threat that people were failing and facing. And not only the tangible threat to individuals, but also the threat to our democracy, which we know is still under attack through voter suppression bills and other tactics too that we still have coming from Trump, where he's still claiming that the election was stolen in 2020. And so tying all of that together under the perspective setting of this was an active threat to humans as well as to our democracy is going to be a big deal.
So, Ellie, I like the idea of the committee. I think this is a good move. I had a feeling Pelosi was going to do this after everything failed in the Senate. But going back to sort of what you mentioned before, this idea of how far the Democrats are willing to go. Now, symbolically, a perp walk does wonders. Do you think the Senate, do you think the House Democrats are committed to not only putting out subpoenas and saying, hey, you got to show up, but will they arrest people who don't show up? And what happens if they have to subpoena another member of Congress? My concern going into this is that it's a brilliant idea, but if everybody thumbs their nose at this committee, then it's going to be a bunch of members of Congress talking to themselves. How far do you think they're going to go, or that they'll need to go, to make this actually effective?
They'll have to go all the way, and they won't. Like, let's just put that on the table right now. The Democrats will not go far enough with this thing. Look, I am happy that they're doing it by themselves. We didn't have Al-Qaeda on the 9/11 commission. I don't see why we should have Al-Qaeda on the 1/6 commission. Like, that is fine. But at the end of the day, the Democrats had to be willing to put some teeth behind it, and I don't see them being willing to do that. And quite frankly, just to, not to blow up anybody's particular spot, but to blow up all of our spots collectively, the media isn't ready to back them up either, right? One of the reasons that Michelle's point about Benghazi was correct is because the media put Hillary Clinton, put her on camera for 11 hours drinking water, right? The emails that they uncovered, that worked because the media did 1 billion stories about her stupid emails for 6 months. Is the media going to put this on TV? Is the media going to put the select committee on TV? Is the media going to focus in on the empty chair that where Lauren Boebert should be sitting, or where Marjorie Taylor Greene should be sitting? Are they going to do that, or are they going to make excuses for why this isn't good ratings and we should be talking about something else? That's also part of the problem. So it's not just Democrats' kind of unwillingness to go the full Monty. It's also the media's ability to get bored when the problem is Republicans overthrowing the government.
Michelle, along those same lines, is there any initial fear, right? I mean, because Democrats have a way of sort of putting themselves in a circular firing squad. Are there any initial fears that you're hearing from already with Democrats saying, OK, we want to do this, but we're concerned because it's not bipartisan, or we think maybe the public won't like it because it's not bipartisan? Are you hearing anything like that now, or are people pretty much like, let's go ahead with it, Pelosi's got the right idea?
The reporting that I've seen has talked about sort of fears that it won't appear bipartisan, but has not attributed those fears to anyone. And so I think, look, I'm sure that there are probably some Democrats who are going to be spooked. It's obviously why Republicans decided to take this gamble, and it really is a gamble. Because if Republicans had agreed to a bipartisan commission, they would have some control over the subpoenas. They would have some control over who was called, right? They didn't want to do that. So the Democrats have full control. I think they just have to embrace the fact that, yes, people are going to call it, are going to say it's not bipartisan, and they have to be ready whenever anyone says that to say, and why is that, right? Why is it that only Democrats have been willing to lead an investigation into January 6th, right? When we extended a hand, you slapped it away. And so I just think that they have to not be worried about it. I don't think most people care about this kind of process stuff. They care about what this commission is going to reveal.
Exactly. They've got power. Now it's time to use it. Michelle Goldberg, Juanita Tolliver, and Ellie Mistel, thank you all so much for starting off our show today.